So, good afternoon, our dear guests. Welcome to UBLN Academy, and here is our second session in the course Recruitment and Employment. Today, we're going to talk about interviewing and what recruiters want. I think that today we won't have a boring session with monologue or dialogue, but today we will question two recruiters. One recruiter is from in-house world, another recruiter is from recruiting agency, and we will make some battle. I hope that we will manage to put them convenient and inconvenient questions just to see their reaction, just to see different answers on maybe different approaches to the same questions, and finally we will try to get from them all useful information and all tips on what to do during interviewing process and to find out what they really want in order for us to get the job. So I'm very happy to welcome today our speakers, Edward Parker, who is Managing Director at Fides Search, who is going to be on the side of recruiting agency, and Karen Siddall, who is Partner Hiring Consultant at Irwin Mitchell, and she's going to be on the side of in-house world. So
thank you for having us.
Thanks, Iryna.
Thanks for joining the session. I prepared a few questions, not a few, but a list of questions. So on Monday we had a webinar with Sandeep Sahmbi from Fides, not from Fides Search, but from Barbary Group. And we were talking about the CV, about how to drop the CV, about the form of the CV, he gave us some tips, what should be in the CV, how it should look in order that recruiters definitely like it and definitely want to call the candidate for the interview. So my first question will be about the CV, and the hiring process, as I said, it started from the CV. What elements should a CV have to engage a hiring manager in order to secure an interview? So in other words, when you look at the CV, how do you understand that I really want this person to call for the interview?
Who do you want to go first, Iryna?
Oh, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Do you want me to kick it off, Ed? That's fine. Okay, so from an in-house perspective, what we would like to see in a CV is, a good profile that's aligned to our firm values. A candidate can see our firm values on our webpage, on our careers page. So, for example, at IM, it's expert hand, human touch, pioneering, approachable, caring, tenacious, efficient, working with integrity. So if the profile can be aligned with those values, and that can come out in the CV, that shows that the prep's been done and it is very much tailored to us. I think another thing that we look at is that the CV actually mirrors and complements the LinkedIn profile, and there's no inconsistencies there. I think that's quite a big one as well, because that does actually get looked at. I think when the candidate is setting out their roles and responsibilities, it's a bit like the STAR principle. What did you actually do? What was your role in it? What value did you add to that process? Client engagement, BD, what did you actually do? Another one would be additional skills. So languages, for example, if the firm has an international reach, that's always very useful. Sectors that have been worked in, many firms, such as ourselves, are very sector-led at the moment. So whilst you've worked in a law firm, which clients have you worked for? Which sectors have they been involved in? That's because obviously that's part of the growth of firms as well. I would say if there's any sort of gaps in the CV, lots of moves, I would look for a reason why that is. Often negative inferences can be drawn, not always fairly, but it can be on a CV. So if that can be explained in the CV, then I think that's always a good thing. And then obviously There's the obvious ones, the technical, hard skills, the outside interest, volunteering, that's all very big as well for firms. You know, charities, etc. A lot of firms are very active in charities, like we have 2 volunteering days a year, for example. So any sort of initiatives, anything that's being done in that space is always really, really good as well. So yeah, and I think be upfront as well about what kind of working arrangement that you are looking for, because that can obviously save time in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, to be fair. And I sift through quite a lot of CVs, and first of all, the bit that I want is a CV to capture me very quickly. So I prefer it when a candidate sets out their kind of core mission statement, you know, who they are, what they offer, in a really short, succinct way. And we actually encourage people to do that. So, you know, set out that kind of impact statement at the start, so I can see, right, okay, this is the person in front of me, and it gets me interested, and I want to go on and read. And I think about the time that people have got to read CVs, and if you imagine that for any one role there could be 10 applicants or 100 applicants, you need to think, right, how am I going to stand out in both of those dynamics? So I would go high impact first, really try and get across your core strengths, what makes you special. And then after that, you have to think about the user, make it easy on the eye. You know, CVs have become so complicated over the last few years. They're set up in grids and different sections. And for me, I just want to be able to read the information in a really succinct way so that I can take as much of it on board as possible. So I actually like it when people simplify the CV, make it very user-friendly to read, and focus on the content. We actually rewrite a lot of CVs, because as a business, everything that we send out to clients, it needs to be fair and consistent. So we have a structure that we follow, which is consistent for all the candidates. And we start with academics. There's no reason for that other than the fact that academics came before the person's career experience. So we try and follow a chronological order. And then we do a summary of their career experience, just like Karen said, so that you can demonstrate the roles the person has had in a very succinct way. And then we focus on the experience that's gained from those different positions. And after that, we bring in things like publications they've been involved in, extracurricular, what they've done to support their learning and development, and then their hobbies and interests. But we really start in a very simple format. And I think if I was writing a CV today, I would think about the reader, who's going to read it. They're reading a lot of CVs. What do they have to remember? What's the most important piece? And then make it easy for them to follow.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that, what Ed says about the formats. You know, you do see some CVs that are overly complicated. I almost need a degree actually to sort of work them out. It is very much about the content. Sort of keep it simple, but just make sure that content's in there. That is the main thing.
I have a lot of questions now, just tons of questions. On the one hand, you say keep it simple. On the other hand, you're saying show everything that you can and all your hobbies, all your skills. So where is this, golden middle between make it simple and make it complicated? How long it should be, not for the recruiter to be boring and not to fall asleep reading it?
I think it's more, when we say make it simple, I think that's more the formatting of it. You see a lot with different boxes and photos and everything, and a lot going on the page. So when we say keep it simple, it is simple format. So have all that information in there. And also, if there are a lot of different jobs, sometimes they can be pulled into one summary. If it's a very, very similar kind of role. So you don't have to repeat yourself in each job. If it's a very, very similar role, you can put it all under a separate heading, and just put the time period you were there. So there are really good ways of condensing it in that sense.
And on the length, I think if you're under 2 pages, it's too short. If you're over 4, it's too long. But there's somewhere in that range that works well. But you've got to think, don't fill the page have an impact. So you want to make sure what you're sharing is useful to the reader, and it's actually going to be useful in their decision making. So it's not an opportunity to fill those pages, somewhere not shorter than 2 pages, not longer than 4 pages, but content rich.
I have again questions. Sometimes when you receive CVs, you can see that these CVs were made within one program. They have the same style, they have the same lines. How do you, what feelings do you have with regard to such CVs? How do you treat them? Do you think that they had to be at least modified in terms of colors, in terms of errors? So, because I think that CVs, in my opinion, I'm not the professional, but I think that's in my opinion, they have to be unique just to show that you're unique.
I don't. I think that it's what I want is a CV that's faultless. So if someone's not put the time in to make it accurate or correct, then that's a red flag, because they have all the time in the world to create their CV. But I'm not worried about the visuals, the tables, the uniqueness, because the content is what's unique. The experience that someone's had, the journey, their life, the skills that they've learned along the way. That's the unique stuff. The page doesn't matter. I don't care one bit about the color. Font, I want it to be boring so I can read it easily. I don't want calligraphy, and I don't want to have to lean in and squint because I'm getting older and my eyes aren't as good. I want it to be readable and very clear so I can make a judgment. What does this person have to offer? What questions do I need to ask? What can I put to one side? And that's it. But color, font, just really should be simple.
There is a huge tip. In Ukraine, when we make the CV, we always put the photo. In the UK, photo, you can't put photo because it's a bad manner. So, but this is something that Karen said, and this is something that we heard on Monday at our webinar. If you want to look the person, you can follow LinkedIn, and this LinkedIn page, the reference, it has to be inserted into the CV, so it makes the life easier to recruiter. You said about hobbies that it might be in the CV. So if, for example, I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, won't I be treated as a violent applicant?
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's part of you.
Do you know what, for me, a CV, things like that, you want to bring the CV to life. You want to get to know the person behind the CV, and to make it stand out, and things like that, outside interests, hobbies. Okay, you don't want to do a whole A4 page on hobbies, but it shows, and it can also be a really good way of, when it gets to interview, of building that rapport. You may have a similar hobby as the person who's interviewing you. So, you just don't know. So I do think it's good. It does bring the CV to life, and I'm all for that.
I'll give you a good example on that. You see some people's CVs and they put their hobbies and interests. And my immediate thought is, how have you had time to work? I mean, you have just ticked off so much. But I find it's a really good icebreaker. And we would not ask a candidate to put their hobbies or interests on the CV that we receive, but if it's there, we will always share it with the client. So we try to introduce zero bias into our CV submission process. But if a candidate puts their interests down, it opens up the door to interesting conversations, and it's really worth doing. I had one person that had ticked off every single football team stadium in the EFL, and I thought, how did you do that?
Wow.
You think you see some really interesting things where you just think, well, that's not even possible. But it's an important part. And if it's jiu-jitsu, if it's cooking, climbing, there's a gazillion things you could do. You should get across what you're passionate about, and that's important to people.
Okay. Edward, I think that my next question is more to you, as you represent recruiting agency, and you have a lot of open vacancies in your profiles. So can you please tell me there are talks that if you submit the CV, it has to be changed every time you're submitting into a new position. So, but if you have like 10 positions, and I really like 10 positions, and I would like to apply to these 10 positions, doesn't mean that I have to modify my CV every time I'm saying, okay, I'm sending it to you for these two different, for these 10 different positions.
Yeah. So what we sometimes say to candidates is give us everything, all of your experience, and then let's be selective depending on the role that we put someone forward to. There is a difference in the type of work that we do versus a normal agency recruiter. So quite often we are putting forward a person for a role that we've specifically targeted, so that there is a bit of a difference to that. But if we do have a candidate that's going out to multiple firms for different roles, we will probably include a covering note. So the CV will stay the same because you're showcasing the most important parts of their experience, but we try and vary the covering note. But if, for example, you might have in our world someone that's going forward for a law firm role or someone that's going forward for an in-house role, our in-house clients really want to understand the skill sets that the person brings to the fore, and they're very interested in things like leadership skills because they're often coming in as a general counsel or a head of one of the areas. And actually, that's something that you don't always showcase within a law firm CV. A law firm CV, you're looking for the technical experience. What knowledge has this person got? What problems can they solve? So I think there is a difference between an in-house role and a law firm role, but we try to keep the CV the same and to alter the covering note for the introduction. But also, we work with the candidates to help them put their best foot forward. So if you were to send your CV to us and it's going to a client and we think that there's something missing, we've had an hour long or a half hour long conversation with you, so we know why you're relevant. And if that's not coming through in the CV, we'll say, hey, look, this needs to be expanded or this needs to be augmented into your CV, because the client won't know that. And you don't want to be the world's best kept secret. You want to show them on paper, hey, look, this is what I bring to the table, and we'll try and help with that. But that if you're applying to 10, 15, 20 jobs, what Karen said at the start is absolutely vital. You need to look at the values of the organization that you're joining. You need to try and make it as relevant as possible. And probably using the recruiter, using what Karen's just described, and having a look at the role that you're intending to apply for, and just applying a bit of thought before you hit the button and go, to make sure you have got everything in there that needs to be in there, is a good thing to do.
Thanks. Okay, so Edward, recruiting agency is a bridge between the candidate and the company. Can you please tell me what the candidate should do in order to secure himself in the next stage? So in order that you recommend the candidate to the in-house recruiter.
Yeah. So there's no rocket science or written rule here, but two dynamics. Let's just assume the world's simple. I'm approaching you either because you're on our database and we think you're relevant for a role, or because we've identified you through our research tools. If we're approaching you, I'm going to tell you why we're approaching you, and for what reason and what the role is about. And you are then saying to us, I've got some questions about that. This is why I think my fit's good, whatever. That's one dynamic. The other dynamic is where you're trying to get us to consider you for roles that we're working on. And I think that there's a genuine element of relationship to all of this. So I want to build relationships with candidates where I can understand what it is they're looking for, so I can ensure that the fit is good with our clients. And we like to be on that side of the equation where we are offering people advice as well, not necessarily career advice, but where we can support them with their decision making. So we need to get to know people. So the first thing is we want to talk to people, and we want to have a half hour or more conversation so we can get to know the candidate. What we do with that, though, because we cannot remember every person accurately, is we code the database up with the information that we've been given. So what goes into the database needs to be as accurate as possible. So I need to work with you to make sure I know exactly what you're looking for, so that we can accurately put you in our database, so that when those roles come through, bang, Iryna, Karen, Ed, whoever is a match for that role. And that matching piece is really important, because some candidates can do a whole range of different things, but they might not have flagged that they're interested in that. So we really like direction from the candidate. If you can give us direction for what you're looking for, the career path that you're looking to go on, and what skills you bring to the fore, that goes into our database, and we've got it locked in then. And in a year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, if there's a match, you're going to get that flag. But on top of that, you don't want to be waiting that much time. So you need to make sure that you keep the recruiter up to date. You let them know what you're interviewing for, how that's going, because that might prompt ideas. It might say to them, hey, look, this person actually likes this organization. We didn't think of that in our initial discussion. Or you might have an interview or a conversation somewhere where your mindset changes. So regular communication and making sure we've still got an accurate understanding of what you're looking for. Those are all the things that you can do to stay relevant. If someone emails me week in, week out, Ed, have you got an update? Ed, have you got an update? The answer is almost always no, because I would update someone if I had an update. But if they message me saying, Ed, I've interviewed for a role that does this, I found that really interesting. When we spoke last time, we didn't really cover that off. Do you have roles in that area? Or I've just done an online course for X and Y. I've now got this. I'd like to add that to my CV. Make it relevant, and build a relationship with the recruiters.
There is one thing that you just said, that you can't remember all people whom you interviewed. Well, it's obvious. I have a friend in Ukraine, and she said, okay, whenever you go to the meeting, whenever you go to the interview, you have to put something on you, something remarkable. So she always puts some scars on her. So everyone always remembers that girl in scarf. They don't remember her name, they don't remember her surname, but they remember some elements that she wore. So yeah, in this way she made herself out of a few hundreds.
Good.
Made herself
Yes. My next question is about the cases that you might have in your practice. Has there ever been a case where a candidate didn't engage with an agency and approached the client, the company, directly, and was successfully employed?
Well, in terms of in-house and here at IM, this is actually a regular occurrence. I would say a high percentage of our hires in the last financial year were direct. And that is via maybe LinkedIn posts, our websites, maybe proactive searches as well. So we do have a high percentage.
But you cooperate with recruiting agencies?
So we do work with some recruiters. We couldn't do it all ourselves. But equally, we do have a high percentage of direct as well. As an in-house recruiter, obviously, we do encourage direct applications, because not only is it of benefit to us in terms of a cost saving, but it does enable us to engage with the candidate as well from an early stage. But obviously, there are instances where a recruiter is beneficial as well. For example, in terms of this initiative, sort of Fides, they understand the initiative, they're driving it forward, so they will be of great benefit to someone and an organisation in that situation. But we do have a lot direct.
But have there been a situation when, for example, a recruiting agency said no to the candidate, and then the candidate comes to you, you're interviewing him, and you say, oh, it's a star, and you hire this person, and then during the conversation after the person was hired, you got to know that this candidate was interviewed by a recruiting agency, and recruiting agency said,
So
no.
that's different. If they've been to that recruiter first, I mean, that's a whole different conversation. If they've been to the recruiter first and applied directly, well, you know, if that recruiter had sent that person to us, then obviously we need to liaise with the recruiter. But, you know, I mean, Ed can obviously comment in terms of the recruitment side there. But in terms of us, if someone comes to us and we don't know they've been with a recruiter, then obviously we will move that process forward. You know, and we have done with success, but whether they've been with a recruiter, I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult because some candidates, they will not believe you when you've said that, you know, client is looking for this or that, and they might go directly and get an interview, and a client might have a policy to interview all the candidates that come through directly because they're trying to there's lots of different things. But if we speak to a candidate and don't put them forward, and they were then to go directly to the client, we wouldn't have an issue with that, with the client or the candidate, but we would be very cautious in the future, because you know, it wouldn't be healthy for us. But if we've made a mistake in not putting the person forward, then there's a very good opportunity to learn in that. So, you know, you have to weigh that up. And I don't think any recruiter is perfect. But sometimes we have one client where we're only able to put forward 3 candidates for every job. So they want us to be their first layer of vetting. They want us to carry out the initial interviews. And it can be so difficult. You know, you're really splitting hairs. You've got 5, 6 very capable candidates, but we are contractually obliged or contractually committed to only putting forward 3. So, you know, you have scenarios like that where you have to adhere to the policies, and, you know, a candidate may well go directly in that case because they know they're a good fit for the role. And that's, you know, that's where you're in a difficult spot.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that much of a common occurrence. I think people, if you have a good relationship with your recruiter and they advise you that it's not a fit, etc., I think it is quite rare that person would then apply directly. I know over the years it's not something I've really come up against. But again, that's all down to relationships.
That's interesting, but it's, yeah, I think that if there is a policy just to give 3 candidates, well, I do understand in-house recruiters why they do this. But on the other hand, you know, maybe the 4th candidate whom you didn't submit, because this candidate didn't go with hard skills, but maybe this person would be the perfect match with regard to, you know, to this personal interrogations with the in-house recruiter. But yes, who knows. So my next question is, there are many different styles of interviews, from phone, video, and in person. These different conditions can be stressful. How can candidates navigate these situations when they have been arranged to pressure test them?
Oh, pressure test. I'm not sure I'd call it a pressure test. I don't think we do pressure tests as such. I mean, I appreciate candidates may feel it's obviously out of their comfort zone, and may feel it's a pressurized environment for them. But I would hate for someone to view it as a pressure test, so to speak. Personally, I wouldn't conduct an interview over the telephone. That's not something. I just think it's hard to assess the level of engagement, and I don't think you can really build that rapport. So for me, a telephone interview would definitely not be a first choice. I think video and in person both have pros and cons. I think a video, if you're on Teams or Zoom, I think the candidate can generally feel more relaxed because they're in their own environment. They might even be able to have the notes all scattered around and feel, you know, in terms of the interview. But what I would say, and I have encountered this, if you are having an online interview, make sure it's all sorted. You've got a quiet place, you've got a confidential place, you've got a really good secure internet connection, because I have conducted interviews where phones have been dropping on the floor, it's been going on and off, and then for the candidate, that's not a good experience for them. You know, they don't perform to the best of their ability. So I just think that's really, really important for that. And I think in person, obviously, that has its place as well. You know, there's a body language, it's easier to break the ice, build rapport sometimes. But again, it's thinking about the logistics of the interview, you know, timings, everything like that. One thing I would say, and I don't know if this is always offered to people, but if people do need adjustments to be made for their interview, whether it be online or whether it be in person, due to, you know, someone might need more time due to neurodiverse condition or closed captions for accessibility, then whilst it should be offered as standard, candidates shouldn't be afraid to ask for it, because obviously if they don't have the adjustments that they need, like I say, whether it be online or in person, then that could obviously adversely impact their ability to perform to the best. So I do think, I mean, we do offer that, but I know when I have spoken to candidates in the past, it's not always been offered. So don't be afraid to ask, because it is really, really important.
Yeah, I think Karen's spot on with all of that. I've met some super impressive people in person that have then crumbled in interview, and you think, what? I mean, they've got everything to really be in a position to shine. But when we're speaking to candidates, if we think that they're nervous, or that there's anything that they're worried about, I just ask, I say, how do you feel about this? How do you feel? Do you want to do anything to prep before? I've met candidates before they've gone into interview for a coffee, or I've said to them, right, I'll meet you straight after, or the first thing you do after is you give me a call and tell me how it went. No matter what, I want to hear how it went. So you try and put them in a mindset where they're not thinking about the interview as much, and they're thinking about something that can distract them. So if you're there with them before they walk through, they're talking, they're relaxed, you can put them at ease. If you're there to talk to them afterwards to get their feedback, it's good practice for you because you can get back to your client quickly, but it's also good for them to have, right, I've got to do this straight after. So, you know, they're not sort of, it gives them something else to think about. But ultimately, you know, what's an interview there for? An interview is there so you can show how brilliant you are. And people want the person in front of them to succeed. I don't believe that people want people to fail. I genuinely would push against that. I think most people want people to succeed, and they want to have a difficult choice between some fantastic people that they really feel they can work well with. So the starting point is, I just genuinely don't believe interviews are set up to make people fail. I think they're there to help people showcase their suitability and their strength. And because of that, if you go into it with a positive mindset, you learn from every interview that you have. It makes you better at it. And at some point, the person interviewing you has been in the same seat as you're in. And at some point, you'll be in the same seat as they're in. So they have empathy and they understand that this is something that's important to the person and blah, blah, blah. But everyone needs to try and do their absolute best. So whatever you can do to make yourself be really focused when you're in that room, to think clearly, to remove outside distractions, and to just listen to the person in front of you and respond to the questions to the best of your ability. I think that's the best that you can possibly do. And also think actively about what you're saying. And if you feel like you've missed something, be a human and go back and say, hang on, let me just correct that. Or, you know, if the answer you feel like was missing something, or you didn't quite capture the question, you can always ask them, did that answer your question? Or, you know, did I go off on a tangent? You know, just see them as a human being and someone that you can interact with, because that will ultimately come across well most of the time. But don't ever go into that room thinking the person's there to trip you up. You know, that you're there to showcase your experience, your brilliance, and they want you to succeed. The questions might be tough, but everyone's going to have to face those questions. And they're designed to poke interest and to create a discussion. So just lean into that and give your honest answer. On that honesty piece, I think authenticity is really important. So the one thing you can tell is when someone is too rehearsed for interviews, they are almost relaying a scripted answer. And I personally don't buy into that because, people are not scripted in the work environment. You need to be able to be present and authentic in that moment, even though you really want it and you want to maximize your chances of getting that role. You've still got to be yourself, because otherwise you won't be a success when you start. If you're not being honest and authentic, it will cause you problems once you've got the job.
And I think just following on from that, I think as well, have the mindset, it is a two-way process. This isn't just to be pressured, to be tested. This is for you to find out if this is actually the right place, the right next home for you. And I think having that mindset changes it as well. And I know in-house sometimes people think it's like this void, your details go off and you get called for interview and that's it. We do try and very much build that rapport as well prior to the interview, sending out the meeting confirmation, sending out some information, asking if there's anything else they need beforehand. So hopefully candidates are feeling that they sort of have a little bit of rapport with us and they know us before the actual meeting. So we do provide the information, whether it's on the department, whether it's on the key people, just to help them along as well, to help them prepare. And I think that's really important as well.
If you're in a situation, that's such a good point, because if you're in a situation where the person interviewing multiple people, some candidates are thinking, I want to knock that question out the park, or I need to answer that question. I don't remember at the end of an interview specific answers, and you might remember one or two, but what you take with you is feelings. You take a kind of an understanding or an interpretation of everything that you've picked up in that room, and you might remember one or two specific points. But I think not focusing too much on the questions and ticking off or delivering to questions, but more thinking about the fact, what is the impression that this person's going to leave with, is really important, because it's very rarely the specific answers to questions. It's more how they approach the question, more how they analyze what it is they're being asked to do, and how they can make a practical answer towards that. There's no right or wrong on a lot of these things. It's not scoring. It's just really the journey of going through and answering that question that's important, and how the person feels about your answer.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to perform well. You want to answer a question in the perfect way, that you want to understand what the recruiter wants, what the recruiter wants to hear in order to give these right answers and finally to get the job. But I heard about different situations, and I heard about different kinds of interviewing processes. What you described is a perfect interviewing process, when you give the candidate, some fresh air and some time for the thoughts and to prepare the answers. But I also heard about the interviews when companies or recruiting agencies make severe conditions, basically like too hot or too cold, or I don't know, a huge line with different candidates, So they want just to test the level of your stressfulness, right? Is the right word for this? So, and they want to understand how you anticipate with this stress. So in this situation, how the candidate should behave. Or for example, if the candidate comes and he's waiting for, 30, 40 minutes for the recruiter to come in.
Well, I mean, this is life, isn't it? You never know what's going to be in front of you, but you just react. What we have to do in most situations is try and be positive, right? It sounds simple, but if you can look at a problem like this in someone being late, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times a client has been late, a candidate has been late. If I took it personally or had a problem with that, you know, where would I be? You have to accept that some situations are going to be uncomfortable, and you have to just acknowledge that, smile about it, be like, okay, this is not going to be my ideal afternoon. I've got more fun things to do, but it leads to where I want to be. And so I'm going to give it my best. And I know that's kind of very, very simplified, but I've been through, I remember when I was younger going through different things. I was put forward for a television show at one point, and they had the most extreme interview process that I've ever seen. It was a whole day. I had to come down for London. I was in and out of rooms. You're in dark corridors. You're then going through. You've got 3 minutes with one person. You come back out. You go into another room. You've got 5 people next to you. You know, you're then given a test. You've got all this. And I've also been through assessment centers and things like that. And the only trick to tackling something like that is to just be there. Don't overthink it. Just be there. Find out what that person in front of you wants. Listen and go for it. And then that's all you can do, is to do your best. And I think those assessment centers and tests are down to trying to get they're trying to see what they are genuinely like and how they perform under pressure. So all you can do is put everything to the back of your mind and focus on what's in front of you, and do it minute by minute, question by question. And then at the end of it, as Karen was saying a second ago, I think it is a two-way thing. But if you get a chance to ask questions, to learn more, you know, be there where you've got be in a position to ask relevant and challenging questions that show the person that you've thought about it and that you're really assessing the fit. So have it at the back of your mind that at some point you're going to get an opportunity. You don't want to just walk out the door saying thanks so much for that difficult afternoon. You want to say thanks so much, and now while I've got you, I've still got energy for this, and I need to know from you X and Y. And you've just got to be as engaged and there in the moment as you possibly can be.
And one question, just picking up on what you said there, Ed, one question I've often been asked over the years is when it comes to asking questions at the end of the interview. And my advice, I'd be interested to hear what you say on this. My advice was always write them down, because guarantee, write more down than you need, because guarantee a lot of them will have been answered during the course of the interview. But if anything else, it shows you've prepared. As long as you've got not a fluffy piece of paper, nice notebook, say, yeah, I've got some questions. It shows preparation. It shows commitment. So I always say, do not worry about writing them down and taking them in with you.
Yeah, I'm a bit I'm a bit controlling around some of those things. So rightly or wrongly, but if there's someone, I want to know what their questions are before, because I might be able to help them with some of them, or I can let my client know that they've got these burning questions, you know, try and tackle them. But ultimately you have to think about who's in front of you. For example, if I put someone to interview with a team member, so not the line manager, but they're going in, they're having an initial with the team member. And if they start asking the team member about compensation, about holiday entitlement, about X and Y, you have to know your audience. And you know, you'll fail at the interview just by asking the person the wrong questions. So think about those questions. They might be important to you, but you need to show some commerciality around who you're asking what question. So think about the questions before. If it's anything that's HR related, comp and benefits, if it's anything that's going to be highly standardized and based on the same contract that everyone else has got, leave it. It's not part of the interview process. You can find that out either through the agent, or you can have a separate conversation with someone that's a specialist in that area. But if there's what I would ask people about is, you know, when Karen mentions the values of the firm, I would say, what does that mean in practice? How do you judge that? What do you do if someone doesn't meet the values? What do you do to project those values across the team? Who decided on those values? Why are those values actually important to you? And how does that make you better than your competitors? So on any topic, there's a way of understanding in a non-aggressive way what that actually means in reality. Because I want to know if those values align with my values, and will my values fit with that firm, I know it's very easy for me to fit with an environment that's got a strong sense of purpose and a strong sense of vision. I want to know what that vision is, but actually I want to know if it aligns to my vision. So you want to know how their vision actually is then going to impact on you as a person, and make the questions fluid and relevant, and then try and ask questions that are more situational. So I really want candidates to leave thinking, this is somewhere I would love to work, and I would love to work with these people, and together we can do X or Y. I want candidates to leave thinking, I can learn a lot from that person, I can learn a lot from that environment. So you need to think about the questions that you're asking and what information that gives you. I think if you're speaking to a founder, if you're speaking to a practice head, if you're speaking to, whoever, you have to think differently about the questions that you ask. And if you say to them something like, I know this question isn't relevant for you, but it's one that's really important to me, and I haven't been able to get the answer from the recruiter, and I haven't been able to get the answer from here. So do you mind if I ask you this question? And then perhaps you can help me find the right person. If there's something that you think I'm just not getting the right information, I know X person's not going to be on. That's a fair way of doing it, but you're showing them that you've thought about it, and it gives them the chance to say, hey, look, I'm not the right person, as you say, but I will go away. And that gives you a chance for a follow-up. So think strategically about how you can use this to create hooks with people and then create a further dialogue. And there's no harm in saying, hey, look, I have got a couple of questions. The one I really want to ask, because we've only got a couple of minutes, is this. But do you mind if I take your email? Because I've got 3 more questions about these topics, and I'll just drop you a line, and maybe we can have a separate call, or you can, maybe the answers are quick and easy or whatever. But you can be very tactical about this point, and it can really help to build relationships.
I can share my own experience. I never ask questions during interview, and I'm usually afraid, like Karen said, that there is, the feeling that I'm not prepared for the interview, but I have my reasons why I don't ask these questions. Because first, well, I don't see any sense in asking about your job obligations or about task the recruiter, because obviously the recruiter just has, the list of tasks that are general ones, and obviously the recruiter doesn't know some specific things or details of what you will do in future. When you're talking to your line manager, to your future line manager, yes, there is a sense in it. However, again, everything is written in the description of the role, and sometimes, those teeny things, even your line manager, he can forget. So it's going to be like a surprise when you're hired already. Second, about bonuses and salary. Well, I during the interviewing process, I indicate how much I would like to earn, what my salary I would like to have. So just asking at the interview whether I'll have bonus or I'll have some compensations. I don't want that recruiters have the feeling that I'm interested only in financial side of the position. So yes, but thanks for your tips. I think that it's very nice to have a few questions about the company, so the recruiter knows that you're interested in this company.
And also, sorry, just picking up on that as well, I think it's really important to know your interviewers, and don't be afraid to ask what they like about working for the company, about asking for things outside of the specific role. So maybe the social side of the company, what they do, maybe, like I say, maybe on the charity side, etc., going further than the role, because that does show that you have an overall interest in the department, in them, why they are still in the business, what they enjoy about it. And it's just digging a little bit deeper than the actual role itself.
Great. So when the interview is over and you're happily spent 2 hours in uncomfortable conditions, or maybe in comfortable conditions with the recruiter, and as Edward said, you're just putting the smile and leaving the room, and at the end the recruiter tells you, okay, And now we really want to check your skills, because this half a day of talking to you is not enough for us. And now we give you a home task. We want you to prepare 100-page contract. So what do you think about home tasks? And do you really think that they are needed and that interview-like dialogue with the candidate is not enough?
I think they have a place. I do think they have their place. You know, it can vary from company to company, department to department. I have had an instance in the past where I interviewed someone who was very well qualified. They got offered the job on the spot. They were absolutely amazing. But actually, when it came to drafting the contracts, they really didn't know what they were doing. But you just presume because of their level of qualification, etc., etc. So I think technical tests, certain assessments, things look for different things. It can be technical, it can be the softer side, it can be behaviours, etc. But personally, I do think they do have the place for that reason. So, for example, here at IM, even up to partner level, we do have some technical tests in certain departments. So it's not just at the more junior level, sort of assessment centre type. And it really, really does, it really works well, and it's received well as well.
I agree. Yeah, and some people actually respond way better in a test than in an interview. It's a chance for them to perform. And if you think about a level and fair process, we probably don't do enough testing. You know, if you see the amount of people that land in jobs and then are unsuccessful, you know, that hurts their career as well. So if someone is not able to do something, it may be that they could be considered for a different role within a business. But you know, interviewing is not about do you or don't you get the role. It's about finding the best person for what the company is looking for. And ultimately, they need to assess everything that they're getting. And now in the UK, you can't really take proper references, so you can't get, you know, a full detailed opinion from the previous employer. You are often relying on what the candidate says. So I think we have to do more to test. Tests need to be better. They need to be more consistent. They need to actually be fairer. And you know, over time, I think we will sort of understand that. What's an issue though, Iryna, and what's very unfair is if candidates are being asked to do the test and there are, say, 10 candidates, getting them all to spend an hour, 2 hour, 3 hours preparing something, I think that's remarkably unfair. And we only see our clients really deploying these sorts of tools at the end of processes where they know the candidates tick every other box, and then they're very close to making a decision. So I would say timing in the process is important, and you have to be respectful of the person's time and what they can commit. I've had a partner fail a technical interview, who then went on to be an exceptional partner at another firm. And you know, these, you know, that's probably the best thing that happened to them, failing in that technical test, because they went to actually a better firm than our client was. And you know, so things are, I do genuinely believe that sometimes things happen for the right reason. But if you've got a test, what's very difficult to prepare for are personality tests, or those sorts of assessments, because the firm is making a judgment based on the results that are given. And I've seen clients shift. We use a psychometric testing tool for some of the work that we do with in-house clients. It's got its place, but it doesn't produce a right or wrong answer. Whereas a drafting test does enable the client to see, is that someone that's got the ability to draft accurately? If you can ask a situational question, we see clients do this where they create a client scenario, and you know, they're asked to then summarize all the risks that they see and then how they would support the client in managing those risks. You know, there's things that actually do help to allow someone to showcase their experience. So there's a place for it. But you know, candidates only want to be doing it when they've got a very good chance that they're going to be the right person. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I know, I agree with that. And I think the thing is as well, you know, often they are used as a tool for then, from the results of these tests, the next stage of the interview process, for getting the most out of the candidates, and knowing what to focus on. But because at the end of the day, they're all here. We want to set candidates up for success. You know, we want to retain them. We want, you know, to keep them in the business. So, you know, all these elements are designed for that.
And on that as well, this is just from my own feeling that we test candidates. We have a process that we follow for all of them. They'll do a paper-based and then a presentation-based exercise. It takes us a lot of time to assess the results, to read what they've done, to think about it. You talk about it as there's usually 3 people involved in that process. That's really time consuming for businesses. So I think the reason why a lot of organizations don't test is because of how time consuming it is for them. And so you have to acknowledge that if an organization is doing that, it's because they're trying to offer an improved recruitment process. It's timely, and it's from that perspective, I think the candidate should read into that and think, okay, this is probably an organization that takes very seriously how it recruits people and the way it runs that process. And if I join that business, that's the kind of business I can really see myself thriving in, because they care about, who's coming into it.
Okay, then my question is, what should prevail, hard skills or soft skills?
Combination.
You can't have one or the other. It's
both.
Yeah, but I can tell you that maybe I'm perfect in soft skills, but I can confess that I'm terrible in tests. If you give me like tests from math from first grade, I won't do this. I don't know. I'm just bad in tests. That's all. That's dot. And obviously, if I pass tests with Edward, I won't pass them. But I'm perfect. Trust me.
I'm not sure that tests are, well, that's interesting. I mean, maths. So some of our banking clients have a test, and one of the world's largest banks has this test that all candidates are asked to do, and it's because they.
No, I mean any test, right? Obviously there are some people like me who are very bad in tests. Because for me, for example, whether all answers are right or that there is no right answer in the test. So you just take what is the best, what best suits for you. How then again, what's better, soft skills or hard skills?
Well, I'll give you just on this example. So every single person to join this bank had to pass a maths test at this particular job band or above. So we had lawyers that dropped maths after GCSEs. So from 16 onwards, they had not done further maths, they've not done higher maths, they've not done maths at university. And we had exceptional lawyers fail these tests. So I think the test has to be fair and appropriate. And I'm not sure why a law firm would test a lawyer on and a lawyer needs to be able to record time, needs to be able to assess damages. There's things they need to do, but actually it's making them relevant to the person. I would say relevant hard skills are, at the top of the list, and you need to have adequate soft skills. If you don't have the hard skills, you're not going to be able to cope. But you need the soft skills to function in a law firm's, that's professional services partnership. It's a team-based collegiate environment, so you need to have the soft skills to function.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally.
I don't know. I'm still very skeptic regarding all these tests. I'm sorry to say this. So, because I mean, then the question why probation period is for, what is it for? So during this probation period, you have a lot of time to understand whether this person has hard skills. Because, for example, if you're lucky enough in tests, if you just all the answers you're marking, they're all right, and then it appears that you simply don't understand the situations when it comes to real life. So yeah, but again, this is I do understand why tests are made, but I do also think that they should be appropriate, like Edward said.
And they're part of the process. You know, they are just part of the overall process as well. You know, it's not just that on its own. But every stage has its place, and it's just bringing it all together, I think.
What is definitely definite no for you when it comes to the candidate? When you see the candidate and you understand, no, I won't give him the second stage interview.
The only thing that someone that can do to get a proper no from me is to lie. If someone's dishonest, if I catch them out, if they've been dishonest in what they've written or what they say, unfortunately you can't trust that person. And so that's the only no that is a hard no. Everything else is situational. What I don't like is when candidates are overly negative about their employers, previous employers, if they are unable to process the fact that X and Y has not gone right, if they take things overly personally. I accept that that's a normal thing, but once you've got into the room and you're having a discussion about your skills and your next role, you need to put that to the back of your mind and focus on the next role. And you need to be able to break from your previous role or from the situation that's led to you being, most people now will have anything from 5 to 20 jobs in their career, so they will go through good exits, not great exits, and probably, but unfortunately, a terrible exit or two. It's not a given, but that's the case. So we all need to get alive to that, and when we come in, focus on what we've learned, what we did well in that role, and now what we're thinking we want to do next. But you can't, I personally don't like it when people talk negatively about their previous employer. I like people to come across as engaged and professional. And by professional, I just mean a healthy degree of interest and enthusiasm. I'm not there to have an argument with someone or to debate the whatever. You want to have someone that will have just a fair discussion with you, will listen and talk, and where you can form a good dynamic. But so combative personalities, people that talk ill of their previous role, or go too far with that, and ensure that what you say is accurate. I think that's the main thing for me.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, I wouldn't say there's a no way hire as such from the outset. But what I would say, I agree with a lot of what Ed said. I think when you actually come to the company, if you don't know about the company, you've not done your research, you don't know anything about the department, that definitely raises a question mark over commitment. So that definitely raises that question. The other thing as well is elaboration on CVs. So saying that you have done something when you haven't, just to try and secure the role. I would much prefer someone say to me, you know what, I haven't done that. However, what I have done is X, Y, Z, and how that can transfer into the role, and something that demonstrates that you are quick to pick things up, you are enthusiastic, and that you can do it, and to show that in another way.
But if I don't put this into the CV, you won't call me, and I won't have a chance to tell you that in fact, I didn't do this, but I did it in another way.
But again,
you have to.
Sorry, go on, Ed.
I was going to say it's very unfair and unwise to waste someone else's time for your own gain. And I know that people want to position themselves, but what Karen has said is the perfect answer. If someone says at the top, someone emails me, say, Ed, look, I really want to talk to you about this. Look, I've not done X or I've not done Y, but can we please talk it through? That's
okay.
That's
do you read cover letters then?
Pardon?
Do you read cover letters? So I might not put it into the CV. If Karen is looking for something, I might not put it into the CV, but then I can put it into the cover letter saying that, hey, I really didn't have this experience in my life, but I'm eager to gain this experience, and I'm very open to new knowledge, and I have this experience that might be relevant helpful with this?
The big obvious one for most of the Ukrainian CVs that we've seen is language skills. And it's the biggest or the single biggest challenge in securing work for Ukrainian lawyers in London in particular, but the UK, is English language skills. And one of the challenges that we had is a lot of the employers wanted a minimum base language skill. So we cannot, we have to be truthful about the level of the language, but not everyone has sat an exam or a test to say what level they've got to. So have a conversation, phone conversation, and you'll try and understand roughly, is the person able to communicate in a written context? Can they read, relatively complex documents? How much can they follow? But crucially, what are they doing to improve that, and what are the timescales? How quickly are they going to learn language? But that's an obvious answer, and an obvious hurdle that we have to overcome with the Ukrainian CVs is that not everybody's language is at a business level. And actually, that's the single biggest improvement that people can seek to make if they want to make themselves more employable, is working on the language skills. So I think that's a really good example where transparency is key. If you can't sit a test, but you can start a course and you can reference that you're doing X and Y course. But this is all about problem management and how someone gets around that issue. So if you see on a job, we're looking for this and this experience, you as a Ukrainian lawyer may have 10 years more experience than is relevant for the job, but you don't hit that language piece. So you have to be transparent about it, but you have to show what you're doing. And that's the only way you can manage it, because otherwise you will get to the interview and you will have blown your chance. Because if you say you've got a skill that you don't have and you get to the interview, you will never be employed by that organization. Whereas if you are transparent and you still get in front of relevant people and you go back to them, it might not work that time because there is someone that ticks all those boxes. But if you go back in 3 months and say, hey, look, this is what's happened, I've now got this, you're really starting to move up on their radar.
But again, back to my question, do we need to prepare cover letters and send these cover letters to the recruiters?
Yeah.
Very sensitive. Okay. I want to know your secrets now. Can you please tell me a few tricky questions that you asked during the interview? Okay, 2 questions. Advanced questions.
I struggled with it because I even spoke to the team earlier. We were like, tricky questions. We can't think of trick. We don't trick people. So no, over to you here, Ed. If you've got any, I suppose what one person finds tricky, another one doesn't. But no, we don't find trick people. But so
I don't know what others. I'm not sure this is a tricky question, but it's a real honest question. How can you enhance our business? What can you do to enhance our business? Because ultimately, that's why we're making hires. It's not out of charity, but what? So I will ask that, and the answers are so wide. How do you enrich the professional lives of those around you? Because it's so important that you play a role in the team and it's not all me, because the more that you can give to others, the more that others will give back to you. And you have to have that sense of team, and enriching others is something that I think we all need to think about every time we walk into the office. And I think we all learned that in COVID and in other times, but it's more relevant today when you think about people's mental health and well-being and what it means to work. And then I sometimes ask people, tell me something about yourself that you've never mentioned in an interview before, because there's no way that they can prep for that. They have to think about things in a really abstract way. And you might actually get a personal answer where you get to see, but I've had people say, I literally cannot think of anything. I cannot think of anything that's sensible to say. And you can have a laugh about that, but you never know what's going to come out of that. We got asked at a coaching session that we did for the team about 2-3 months ago, we got told everyone had to list something that nobody in the room knew about them. And some people couldn't come up with anything in that moment. Some people came up with some fantastically interesting things, and you're like, wow, okay. But the difficult questions you don't have to answer, because there may not be something that comes into your head at that time. But those are all questions that I think are tricky. People sometimes at the end of the interview want to know more about the person. That's where I would leave things off. Just getting a lasting and final personal impression is something that we try and build into what we're doing.
And I think often the more personal the question is, the harder people find it. Definitely.
Yes, because you are concentrated on professional questions, and then Karen decides to ask you some personal. And dear lost, that's a stressful station, by the way, as well.
I think I'm quite nosy sometimes. Not nosy. When we have interviews, I really like to get to know somebody. So, if they start talking about something, I say, oh, tell me about that. And I don't think they often expect it to go down that route. But no, I do like digging deep.
By the way, regarding the end of the interview, sometimes you're going to the interview and then the final stage starts. You start waiting. You're waiting. Then you start counting your gray hairs, You're waiting for the feedback. And the feedback, guess what? It never comes. So, question, how long should the candidate wait for the feedback? And is it appropriate to give a call to the recruiter and just ask how the interview went and what's the next stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to feedback, it's crucial. You hear so many stories. I mean, I just saw something on LinkedIn earlier about someone who's been for interviews, been through 3 processes, never got feedback or anything. And I just think, irrespective of how that interview's gone, you want somebody to leave the business with a good impression, even if it's not right for them, it's not right for you. Normally as a business, we do normally have the recruiter calling us saying, how did it go? But if, for obvious reasons, but if not, I will definitely follow that up within 24 hours, usually the same day if I can, because I just think, I know how I felt when I've been to interviews in the past, and you come out and you question it, and you want to know how it's gone, what the feedback is, what the next stage is. And when it comes to next stages, hopefully, we have managed the process before that, so people do know what to expect and what the timescales are. But yeah, I think feedback is crucial, and I think the more feedback you can give somebody helps them. If this isn't the right role, then it really, as much as you can help them for their next role, for their next interview, I think that's just so important.
Thank you, Carol, because I do think that it's fair to the candidate just to give the feedback, at least to say, yes, you passed, you didn't. What's your practice?
Yeah, I don't think it's something that people are always very good at. I think it's actually a real problem. We spend way too much time chasing for feedback, sometimes from candidates as well. The client's desperate to know what did the candidate think, because we're in the attraction game. So quite often we're trying to get the candidate to join our client. And it's very difficult. Sometimes people sit on things. It's tricky. So we do things like we say, look, we're going to call you, or call us straight after. We'll email, text, whatever is needed to try and just get some feedback. I'll say to people, look, if you just want to voice note me, and I'll write it up. But I have, some situations where we just don't get feedback. Chase, you don't hear anything back, and there's no excuse for it. But it's more common than you would think.
Yeah, and I think as an in-house recruiter, I do, or shall I say, we do as a team, we do chase that up. Because I appreciate the hiring manager can go from one interview to another meeting, etc., and it is for us to chase that up, and either work directly with the candidate or with the recruiter, to move it forward. But yeah, I really, for me, it's huge. The more feedback, the better.
I have final questions, and Edward, thanks so much for your previous comments with regard to Ukrainians and what we miss, what skills we miss, because I do think that Ukrainians are brilliant professionals, and even though, yes, we're not native speakers, but we do our best, you know, to communicate, to even with mistakes, but still. And we're just asking for the job, and we're asking for giving us a chance to show our skills. So my next question is about Ukrainians. Many Ukrainian lawyers have now relocated to the UK and are struggling to find employment. Have you seen a slowing in the industry that may be a contributing factor?
Yes, the hiring has slowed down across the whole market. So that's
With regard to
100%.
Ukrainians or general to the legal market?
Everybody, the market has really slowed down markedly. And, you know, it's not just slowed down on the hiring, there's also more people getting let go. You know, we get way more CVs through the door from people that are saying, hey, look, I'm, you know, unemployed. And these are really skilled people. I think my honest view, this is 100% how I personally feel. Every Ukrainian lawyer should be hired in London that wants a job here, and that there should be law firms really jumping to make it work for Ukrainian lawyers, partly because it's their duty. They're in a kind of a fraternity of lawyers where you have to support the profession and you need to protect these jobs. Our whole mantra is about if you protect jobs, you protect lives. But in reality, this is one of the most competitive markets for human capital on the planet. So we're not just talking in the UK, Europe, but it's one of the most competitive markets. We have one of the leading education systems. We have one of the leading training systems for lawyers. Our lawyers are involved in some of the most high profile work there is, and law is one of the biggest exports in the UK. So there is a degree of challenge around climbing the pole and getting up to a point where your skill set is as relevant as it needs to be in order to have a job that is parity. And I feel like roles where someone can achieve parity, that is very hard to do and will continue to be very hard. But actually, what I've seen is that every Ukrainian lawyer I've spoken to has been entirely open to taking a role that gets their foot in the door and allows them to get experience. I've seen wonderfully experienced people saying, look, I will be a legal assistant, I will be a paralegal, I will come across as a junior lawyer, I will work as a non-practicing lawyer, I will work. And I think that's where all the law firms need to get behind the Ukraine initiative or their own personal initiative and start finding roles for Ukrainian lawyers. And also now, because this war is going on, we need to also look at supporting those that were in study, those that intended to study, or those that haven't actually practiced in the Ukraine, so that we can create an environment that means their learning and experience and their professional development continues, because these are the skill sets that are going to be needed to help right all the wrongs. So I'm fundamentally of the view that every Ukrainian lawyer should be hired, that they need to be hired quicker, they need to be supported in their development, but at parity, it's not going to happen because of the difference in the systems and the learning that's been missed. So that providing this willingness, I just cannot see why a law firm would not embrace this fantastic opportunity to work with people that are really hungry and committed to work. And as you say, Iryna, they have so much to offer. You know, give them a chance and they'll do 150%. You know, there's no doubt about it. I've met some super motivated people, but we just need to create those chances. We need more law firms to engage. We need law firms to help solve the problems for some of the Ukrainian lawyers that are trying to find work. And we really need law firms to create as many opportunities as possible, even if they're for 3 months or 6 months, 12 months. The time scale is less relevant. because it creates that opening to generate some experience, to put one's mind towards a different challenge, and to focus on work and something that's productive where you can add value and create a sense of self-worth. You know, these are all really important things, and I think we just need more law firms to back this.
I also want to say that this is a great opportunity to get highly qualified lawyers, and well, yeah, as you said, that we're open to have junior roles just to get some hard skills. So, and for the law firms and for the companies, business companies, it's a great opportunity to get highly professional lawyers, but in junior positions, and to raise them to the positions that they want to raise. And having this chance, Edward, I want to thank Fides Search for your pro bono project and for helping Ukrainian lawyers to find jobs in the UK. Thanks so much for this.
No, we want to do more, and we've got a fantastic database of people. We just need to find the firms that will try and take as many of these people on board as possible. And it's obviously 100% pro bono, but you know, we just need to find more law firms willing to engage. So if there's any message that we can get home today, it's that, you know, the more firms we can get to engage with this, the better. And what you're doing, Iryna, in terms of creating a network for lawyers and for people to learn, engage, build a peer group, and to, you know, we can't underestimate how hard it is to recalibrate to a different market, just personally and professionally. You know, so what you're doing is phenomenal. If you keep this up, you will really help an abundance of people, and you also help people like me and Karen and others learn about the challenges, the questions, the differences, which really makes us better at what we're trying to do as well. So thanks for inviting us to talk on the subject today.
Thank you so much.
Really grateful for your work.
Karen, do you have something to add to this Ukrainian-British legal market situation?
I think, I mean, Ed's obviously the expert in this, and you know, I think what he said is absolutely right. From my personal perspective, it's only fairly recently that I've obviously learned about this pro bono initiative, etc., and looked into it, and obviously connecting with yourself. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think what Ed said, you know, what you're doing is fantastic, creating this network. And you know, the more people that, you know, understanding what it's about and what Fides are trying to do, I just think, you know, the more people, the more firms that can get on board, it's like a no-brainer.
It would be great, yes. So my final, it's not a question, but a request. Can you please give some tips to our Ukrainian lawyers and to all our community, legal community, on how should Ukrainian lawyers and again, non-Ukrainian lawyers behave in order to get the job after interviews?
One thing, I'm going to sort of start at the end of the interview here, because I think this is one thing that people really need to think about before they go in, is how to finish the interview. And I think often it can get to the end of the interview and it can get a little bit, I wouldn't say awkward. It's like, okay, thank you, you know, answer questions, that's it. I always like people to think, if they're in the mindset of there's them and there's another who is equal to them, maybe on paper, etc., you know, enthusiasm you can't train, technical skills you can. So at the end of the interview, you know, just to say something like, thank you so much for your time, I've really enjoyed meeting you, I'm really interested in the role, people will remember that. So if it's between you and one other, so I think it's really, really important to just think of how you finish your interview.
Yeah, I have this idea that you start with a bang and you finish with an even bigger bang. So that, you know, that first impression, you're in the room, you're facing off to a human being. You know, you need to show warmth, interest, enthusiasm, and that you can project through your face, through your smile, through your presence. But they're giving you their time, and you're giving them your time. So, you know, let's respect one another's time and the fact that's being done. And at the end of the process, Karen said, you know, you're leaving, you want to sign off on a high. I always say, do some research into the person that you're seeing. So if you get the list of people that you're meeting, make sure you look at their profiles, look at LinkedIn. What's not always the case, because not everybody is big on social media, but you'll see sometimes people are passionate about certain things. Like I really like to see what people are posting about, what articles they've written. And I'll actually read some of their articles or posts, because it gives me a chance to get an insight into how they think. I love that when my clients have written something or posted something, and constantly looking out to see what topics they're interested in, because it helps you to build rapport. And if you've got a mutual interest, then that's really a slam dunk. So I'd say look at the person, look at LinkedIn, see what they're passionate about, if there is anything. And also don't see it as just don't see it as an environment where you're going in. We're talking about it earlier, to be tripped up. They want you to perform the best that you can possibly perform, and they're humans as well. So just engage with them on that level. If you feel like you haven't quite got something right, or if you feel like they asked you a really good question during the interview that stumped you, there's no harm in at the end just saying, something you said half an hour ago really piqued my interest. I've appreciate we've moved on from that, but I've been thinking a lot about that, and actually, this is what I would say on that. Or that question really opened my mind to something I hadn't thought about. Or sometimes people will say, actually, just hearing how you've described the company has made me really interested. I wasn't sure when I came in whether this was going to be right for me, but what you said there really helped me understand this. And I'm grateful for that, or thank you for that. Because if you have actively listened in the interview and you've taken on board as much of what the person has said, you are going to be in a position where at the end of it, you can round things off in a more thoughtful way. So I would just try and either deliberately or authentically think about what you can do at the end, as Karen said, to try and close with a bang.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Ed said earlier, about sort of a very rehearsed, robotic sort of interview technique and answers, authenticity, I think, is key. Just be yourself, be authentic, and really sort of just active listening, really engage. And if you can tailor that off at the end and bring some of that in, it's that people will remember that.
Thank you so much for this. Edward, Karen, thank you so much for joining this session. I think that it was fantastic, and we got so many tips on how to behave during the interview. And we didn't get to know all your secrets, so maybe when the next time we have offline events, I will be very glad to see you there and have drinks with you. So maybe in this way we will find out your secrets. But
lots of secrets.
So again, thank you so much. Dear guests, thank you so much for joining our session. And I'm waiting everyone at our third session. It will be about how to find a job for a lawyer, tips from recruiter. And our special speaker will be Joshua Blake, director at Montresor Legal. It will be on the 29th of August. Thank you so much again to everyone. We made a record of this session, and I will post it at UBLN YouTube channel. So thanks again. Have a good evening and see you.
Right, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Erin. Thanks, Karen.
Bye.
Bye.